You're listening to the Your Story Within podcast with Dr. Jeannine Bennett, a writing coach and author with 5 published books to her name and a few more in the works. Through this podcast, Dr. Bennett aims to help listeners tell their story within and shares all the industry secrets of self-publishing and book marketing. And now, here's your host, Dr. Jeannine Bennett.
Welcome to the Your Story Within podcast. I'm your host, Jeannine Bennett, and I'm so excited about today's conversation. Joining me is Daniel Wright, the author of Words for Warriors, A PJ's Guide to Guts and Glory. Danny is a former U.S. Air Force Pararescueman with more than 2 decades of experience in special operations and combat rescue missions. After retiring from military service, he turned to writing as a way to process pain, share hard-won lessons, and encourage others who are fighting battles of their own. His new book is a spiritual field manual for anyone struggling with doubt, exhaustion, or the weight of the past. Danny, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on and joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited.
Great. So friends, Daniel, again, is the author of Words for Warriors, PJ's Guide to Guts and Glory. I have that on the screen for you. I'm going to take that off now. We're going to jump right into our questions.
All right.
So Danny has a lot of wonderful experience, and so I want everybody to hear all about it. So let's start at the beginning. You chose one of the most demanding roles in the military, pararescue. What drew you into that world, and how did those years shape who you are today?
What drew me into that world? So I think growing up, I was like a super high energy kid, like ADHD, bouncing off the walls. I had a really hard time sitting still in class, and high school was actually relatively easy for me, but I got into college and it was just different. So it was more challenging. I think I was in like aerospace engineering, and September 11th happened. And I just had this like kind of like crisis of conscience. I felt like I was living for myself. I felt like I was in the wrong place, and I just needed to pivot. I think I needed more discipline in my life and less sitting in a classroom, more movement, just with me sort of being that high energy kid. And so, yeah, I mean, I went to talk to a bunch of people, wanted to join the military with, sort of feeling the patriotism of 9/11 and feeling like I needed to move out in a different direction. And I saw the pamphlet in the Air Force recruiter's office for pararescuemen. Or pararescue, it was a noble mission of saving lives and aiding injured, and parachuting and scuba diving and mountain climbing. And as a high energy person, I was just really excited. So, yeah, I think that's what kind of drew me, I guess, into the career field. And then I joined up April Fool's Day of 2003. So a couple of years later is sort of a cosmic joke between, me and the Almighty. But no, I love my time, 21 years in the Air Force, of that sort of technical rescue specialist and trying to figure out what it meant to perform at that high level of, low supply, high demand performance. And it was just great. I was really grateful for my time in, and that really taught me a lot as a pararescueman. Did quite a few deployments: Afghanistan, Iraq, Iceland, Japan, a bunch of different places. And so just really grateful for the opportunity, and I learned a ton.
So how did you go from that to writing? What compelled you to write, and what compelled you to write this kind of book? Yes,
that is a super great question, because if you ever saw me write on a whiteboard, you'd be like, he can't even spell good. And it's super. So I would say that it doesn't make, and I definitely didn't start off with this process in enjoying writing. But I just felt like, for me, I think what drew me to try and write down and capture, all of these lessons learned in the book that I wrote was, I just felt like I'd had this really good experience in the Air Force where I'd done hard things, or not necessarily that I'd done hard things, but I've been put under a lot of pressure and I'd made all these mistakes. And I was just like, I just want to be able to give back all these hard lessons that I've learned to other people and help them succeed. And I just felt like it would be like, I would be a bad steward of these awesome experiences if I didn't try to give them back. So that was me trying to, I guess, give back all that hard learned information, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I got to tell you, you're going to see me look down because I got all these notes, friends, and I want to make sure I ask all the right questions.
Okay.
So, Danny, was the book more healing, or did you always see yourself writing for others? I know you said that writing wasn't always your gift, as you described,
No.
but I mean, you wrote a phenomenal book, and we'll get to what the book is about and all of that stuff. But was there a healing component to it? And did you always want your first book or any book to be a support for others?
That's a really good question. There was definitely a cathartic healing aspect of sort of trying to parse through my experience, especially, I mean, I told you, it took me a long time to write it. I always think of the Mark Twain quote, if I had more time, I would have written a lot less. So I actually wrote like a bunch of stories and a bunch of things, and then had a couple people read it, and then they were like, it's really long and kind of boring. And so I try to, anyways, I say all that to say, it was very cathartic to write the book. But at the same time, I think I had this moment like leaving my last deployment in Afghanistan in like 2020. I kind of felt like this was probably the last time I was going to deploy. I came back to a different world. It was like post-COVID during that time period. It's a bunch of madness going on in the news. And I just kind of felt like people were being misled. And not that this book is political in any way. It's definitely not. But I was like, I just want to put my truth out into the world in hopes that it can kind of help lead people in the right direction. Because I felt like I'd learned so much. And so I was grateful for the learning. There was a catharsis in it. So maybe it's everything happening at the same time. I don't know. Yeah. Or if I even answered your question appropriately.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. You did. Now, you call the book Words for Warriors a spiritual field manual. Was that the turning point when you knew you had to share lessons to a broader audience?
Yeah.
What were you thinking with that?
So I think and I told you there was a couple of revisions for the book. I feel like the first time I wrote it to kind of be cathartic and tell my stories and then say, hey, this is what I learned. And then after I wrote it, I was like, well, it felt dishonest because I was like, well, there's this other person in the journey than me that really is, to me, was the main character. And that was, my faith, my religion, my Christian faith. And I felt like I didn't tell that side of the story. And so when I went through the revising process, I was like, I really just got to tell more of the Jesus side of things. And so I think that's what drove it into the spiritual field manual, because I was like, that to me was the real driver for all these stories, all these lessons learned. There was this invisible, but very present God in the background. And I felt like I needed to drive that point as much as I could. So
yes, having read the book, I can say I definitely felt that aspect shine through.
Okay, good.
Now, for our audience, because not everybody has a military background, my audience is mainly Christian, so they get that part. But can you tell them what a field manual is?
Yes. Typically, the military has all these technical type documents that tell them how to do things. If you're getting shot out by an enemy, then you're going to react with, covering fire, or you're going to move in this direction, or you're going to bound forces and maneuver. And so it really just gives the average soldier or somebody that's going to war a set of like rules and guidance and operating procedures of what to do in certain situations. And so a lot of my writing in the military was very technical and field manual-ish. So it was kind of what I knew, but I felt like that the military does some things well and some things not so well. And field manuals, I feel like if you can write it short enough, they can be very effective to giving direction in times of difficulty. And so, I think this is a really challenging time. I mean, it's always a challenging time. I'm sure from any time period, there's challenges, but I think it's a challenging time. And, hopefully that direction from my lessons learned will help somebody. So that was kind of the thought for.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved how you outlined the book. You had a story, you gave some scripture, and then you kind of gave some instruction, which I guess is like you said, the field
Right.
manual aspect of it. And so I appreciated it. Now, so was the book written mainly for men?
Not necessarily. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself. I mean, I think it may speak to men maybe more because I'm a man and I wrote it, so unintentionally.
When you see warrior,
Yeah, right.
conjures up the concept of a strong man, perhaps. Sure. But I asked because I loved the book.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm not a man. But I loved it because I felt that even though I couldn't necessarily relate to the pararescue part or some of your experiences, I loved the way you laid out the stories because you really demonstrated them more as everybody goes through challenges and here's your way through it. Some challenges, depending on your role, as you explained, were very different. But yet they were still challenges that you had to solve, and you had to solve them in a timeline, just like we have to do in everyday life. And so I did appreciate that. And so I did want to throw that out there, that it's not just for men, although it may seem like it is by the word warrior or whatnot. It really isn't, ladies. So don't shy away from it.
Yeah, no, to your point. So most of my positive feedback for the book reviews and things that I've gotten have been from females. And I think it's just because females are generally better at expressing themselves. But I will definitely echo your point, is I've had a lot of positive feedback from females that have said that it was very helpful to them. So I definitely never intended it to be exclusive, didn't want it to be exclusive, but definitely was not writing necessarily with a particular group in mind, which is like counter to everything they tell you.
Right.
I had not to like find a niche, and I was like, oh,
right.
Everybody. I don't want to be exclusive. So
right. You went broad, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's needed. All right. So let's talk about the heart of the book. So in the book, you highlight grit, humility, focus, and obviously faith. Why those four specifically?
Yeah, so I think there were definitely some important aspects, for me and my military career of, grit was very much needed and focus and faith was very much needed. But to me, there was almost like a sort of this 10,000 foot view that I was trying to get people to see, which was to encourage people to sort of fight for this life of their calling. Like, what are you being called to? Like, I can't dictate that. Like, that's really an introspective conversation. Yeah. And I think in order to live into that life that, that they feel internally called to, that it's going to take grit. It's going to take, you're going to try to get knocked off that ledge of that person that you're trying to live into. I think it's going to take humility because you're going to have to grow into that. I think humility to me is like sort of the basis for growth. I think the biggest killer to growth is pride. And so I really wanted people to be, and I think it's going to be distracting, right? Gosh, life is so distracting right now. I get distracted by my phone all the time. I'm constantly telling myself not to be distracted by my phone. So that focus is really important on, living into that life and living into the person that you want to be. So to me, they were like core traits that I had been taught. Not that I'm certainly not perfect at any of those things, but I thought they were mostly like pillars to get to where you wanted to be, which was, how do you get to that life that you've been called for? I think everybody's got this extra gear or extra thing that they're supposed to live into. And I think most people know what that is. And so I just really wanted to encourage people to do it.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you definitely lived the 4 in your everyday military and personal life. So I could definitely see it shining through again through the book. And so just curious, that's why I wanted to ask. So let's talk about the hard lessons now. You tell some powerful stories in the book. Is there one in particular that you felt you really just had to tell? Like the book wouldn't have been the book if you didn't share it.
Yes. So sort of like my final, so there's like a part 1 and a part 2 to the book. If your listeners haven't read it, that's okay. I'll sort of give you the ending, or at least a little bit of the ending. And the first part ends with kind of what I thought was like one of the biggest virtues or biggest moral lessons that the military taught me. And I really went back and forth on whether or not to tell a story. And it's a story of, loss, or, what's it like to lose somebody? And I think, you got a ton of listeners out there that have lost people, or they wrestle with, what's it like to lose a family member, or what's it like to lose something important in their life, or even to sacrifice something. What's that look like? And so trying to figure out how to tell that story in a respectful way, to the member that was lost and their family members, and whether or not to even tell it. I went back, and I originally didn't even have it in there. So that was a really challenging story to figure out how to tell it with, love, truth, and grace, and really trying to push people into the moment and sort of my emotions with it, and sort of what was the so what that I took out of that, hard moment. So I would say that would be my hard lesson.
Yeah, I would say, we all deal with silent battles, just like when you're writing the book and you have that story, right? Should I tell it? Should I not tell it? It's the same with everyday life, where we have experiences that are traumatic. And who do we tell? In the church, we have community. But
Right.
sometimes even there, do we want people to know or see, in a sense, the ugly or the negative, and sometimes, not to get ultra spiritual, but sometimes, the enemy puts those thoughts in our head that, oh, nobody cares. Why should you share?
Right.
And so I loved that you shared some of those challenges and traumatic experiences and how you moved through them. Your faith definitely shined through, but your support system as well. And, of course, the grit, but you always told your stories with humility, never better than anyone else. In fact, you pointed to Jesus or God as the one to give thanks to for getting you through. And so I thought that was fantastic. All right. So faith in the fire is the theme I want to talk about next. And so
Okay.
Your faith shines through every chapter. We've already said that. Can you share a moment when your relationship with Jesus made all the difference, whether in combat or in the quiet battles afterwards?
I think for me, it was like probably both, or almost neither. For me, I think the biggest thing about my faith and the challenges in the military that I got to face was it just shaped my perspective. So it gave me a mental framework in which to put everything into. Like each present moment or each challenging moment, I got to shape or evaluate because of this core belief that I have. And so having that perspective, where God was in control, or that he is loving and cares about me, or, I might not always understand the moment on why it's raining, but I may get to see the growth as a result. And so I think that, hard moments and adversity can produce something really good. And so for me, having that Jesus framework just really helped sharpen my blurry image of what I thought the truth was. And so to me, that was really helpful in making a big difference on really how I reacted to situations or proactively, got after objectives. So does that answer the question?
Yes. And, I didn't ask, how long have you been a Christian? Like, what drew you to Christ?
Forever. I was the kid that grew up in church, baptized at an early age. Certainly not the model Christian my whole life. I'm not saying that. But, I think Jesus has been, I'm very, very fortunate to have parents and an upbringing that kind of stress the importance of that relationship and that core belief. So super grateful to have that foundation, especially walking into something as challenging as, being in the military for 21 years. I'm very grateful.
Yes. So let's talk about everyday courage. Now, most of our listeners have never worn a uniform, but in your book, you call everyone a warrior.
Right.
What does everyday courage look like in the civilian world now that you're out and you experience full civilian,
Yes.
the full civilian world? What do you see as standing out as everyday courage?
Yeah. So I think, like you said, I came from a background for the last 21 years in the military was, always adrenaline junkies. People in my world love to jump out of planes. They love to climb mountains, ski down them, swim deep waters. But I think often, like, this everyday life reality in the for the military, that's like every day, right? And so for them, it almost becomes commonplace. And so I think of as courage as anytime you're stepping outside your comfort zone. And I think being in the military and feeling that adrenaline rush all the time, it really taught me almost that feeling of what it means to be scared. And then what do you do with that feeling? And so almost just the recognition of being fearful or having my emotions get jacked up, like even preparing for this podcast, I'm like, oh, I'm going to say something stupid. Like, you've got a lot of guests. It happens, right? And so you're like, well, how am I going to deal with this emotion? Do I just cancel? You know what I mean? Do I not come
You
on
should
the show?
see my blooper reels. Don't even feel bad.
Yeah. Well, what does it look like? And so I think for everyday people, they have these moments that they might be in the meeting and they feel this spiritual nudge. They're like, you really should speak up. You should really say something. And so to me, that's everyday courage, is when they move away from, I might look stupid, or should I take this speaking engagement where I have to talk in front of 200 people? 200 people is just not my speed. I've never met these people. What is that going to look like? I have to prepare. And so to me, that's everyday courage, and it looks different for every other person. But I think recognizing that adrenaline when your spirit is, trying to get out, and you get that excited feeling, I think that's a good moment to say, all right, here's an opportunity for me to show some courage and really to take that leap and lean into those moments. I think that's, to me, what it looks like.
Now, you shared a lot of stories. You shared a lot of perspectives within the book. Is there anything you want our viewers to take away from with regards to the book?
I guess if you have listeners out there that may just be lost, or they're trying to figure out a way forward, or they're trying to orient, I think for me, the book, my hope was to encourage people that are maybe in a moment of challenge or difficulty or disorientation, So I think that's what I would want to share. And maybe if they don't want to, pay the $8, please reach out to you. They can get in contact with you, or I'll just give them a free copy. I've got some lying around, but really, I think that's, to me, the fun part of writing. I mean, you've written quite a few books, is when you get to help somebody that you may not have otherwise been able to help. That to me is the fun part. So I guess I would want to encourage the people that are in those hard moments that, not only my resource, but there's a ton of other good resources out there. But I think mine's a good book.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic book. I love it.
But yeah, I guess that would be one of the things that I would say, like, if you're lost or looking for something, I think it's a good tool or resource to help get you moving in the right direction.
Yes, I agree. Now, with that said, where can they find the book?
Yeah, so it's on Amazon. It's on Audible, Words for Warriors, The PJ's Guide to Guts and Glory. I think it's on Kindle. So those are some sources that they can find it at. So all the major outlets. I think it's on Apple iBooks or whatever it's called.
Okay, awesome.
So you can find it in those.
And you mentioned earlier, before we started the show, that you had a promo code for our audience.
Yes, I got a few promo codes, which I'll definitely pass out. You can distribute them as you see fit. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I will definitely kick it over to you for distribution, just as this small thank you to you and a thank you to your listeners that have made it this far. So we'll save it for the good ones that have made it through the end of the interview. But no, yeah, like, as I said, the fun part to me is, I have no grand illusions of making $10 million off writing a book, but it's super fun if you get to encourage and help people. And so that, to me, is a real fun and the objective.
Yes, I think from my perspective, that's the bigger reward, right? Is knowing that you made a difference, whether it's for 1 people or 10 million people.
That's right.
That it actually made an impact for the good, especially in this world where there's so much negative out there. You can't, turn anywhere. You can't turn the news on. You can't read the paper, social media even. There's so much negative. And so when a book like this comes out that counters that and provides impact, I just think it's so awesome, for lack of a better word. It's just awesome.
Well, thank you very much. Very kind.
You've written the book. So what's next? What's on the horizon for Danny?
That's a great question. I think most exciting and also most challenging is being a dad and a father. So this last week, I'll share a quick story. This last week, or 2 weeks ago, I got to do Halloween decorations because I just don't have a ton of things going on. I mean, I'm a part-time drone instructor. So if you need instruction on how to fly drones, I'm very capable flyer. I fly toys around, which is the best job ever, but part-time only. So I have a lot of free time on my hands. But the last 2 weeks ago, I got to put out Halloween decorations. I've never thought about Halloween decorations or cared about it. Not that I think that Halloween is something to be super celebrated, but I can tell you it's a lot of fun to put up hay bales and scarecrows and pumpkins and feel like that you get to create a little bit of fun for your kids. So leaning into being a dad that gets to drive my kids around has been really fun, and a husband that gets to help support my wife has been really enjoyable. So that's on the horizon until God calls me into something next. Being a part-time flyer and hobbyist to teach people how to fly drones.
Yeah, because how old are your kids now?
So my oldest is 15 and my youngest is 9. And there's one in the middle there somewhere. I think he's 13. But I feel very fortunate to be at an age where I, want to make an impact as a dad and mentor and usher them in to the next phase of life. And I constantly have to remind myself that that's a really important job, probably one of the most important jobs that I'll do. And so that is what's next until I get further direction.
Yes, we need more strong fathers, in the world. Like I was saying, you watch TV and they're always downplaying the role of the dad, and then society wonders, well, what happened to our kids? Why aren't they stronger or whatever? And we can go into a whole nother dialogue on that. But, it's good to hear that you're able because, as you said, you were in the military for 21 years and deployed a lot. And so there's a lot you miss. So I'm glad that now you're able to take advantage full force of making an impact in your children's lives. And we'll get to see the fruit of that. Maybe one day they'll write a book. Who knows?
Would love to read it. They're going to do great things. And, and to view it as a primary role. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest adjustment. I've always been a dad, but like you said, it's military is very distracting. It's demanding. So it's been really nice to put that first.
My husband was also in the military, and as was my father and grandfather, and so long line of military. And so I understand the sacrifice for both, you and your spouse. It's not easy. And then again, the kids, they're brought up to be resilient. And sometimes, they shouldn't have to be so resilient to change all the time. But I'm glad that you're there now and can move forward full time.
That's right. That's right.
Now, as we close out, is there any piece of advice you'd like to give our audience as a last response for them?
Yes. I mean, I think, you brought up a great question about courage. I think I would just encourage your audience to be courageous. I think everybody knows what that next step they're supposed to take is. There's always one scary step that they're, maybe it's on a daily or maybe it's a big step, maybe it's a small step, but I would just say, take the step, move forward in faith on being the person that you're supposed to be.
Awesome. Wonderful advice. Well, Danny, this has been such an inspiring and powerful conversation. Thank you for sharing your heart, your faith, and your story with us today. Listeners, remember, and let me put it back up on the screen. Get Danny's book, Words for Warriors, A PJ's Guide to Guts and Glory, available on Amazon, Audible, Kindle, wherever books are sold, is what I'm going to say.
That's right. Wherever books are sold.
Yes. So grab your copy today. And again, thank you for being on the show, Danny. And to all of you tuning in, thank you for joining us on the Your Story Within podcast. Until next time, keep pressing forward with grit, humility, focus, and faith.